Hello, hello, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Conversations with Curtis, Keeping Jazz Alive streaming. My name is Lonnie Davis, and I'm the president and CEO of JazzArts Charlotte. And I'm very thrilled to be here with you this evening. We have a very special guest with us, Mr. Teodross Avery will be joining us, and we'll have a great conversation up. Just a second, I will like to add that we are on a new platform this evening, you may have noticed. So I do want to welcome everyone to our Facebook Live and YouTube Live platforms. And I will say, if you have any questions for us this evening, please don't hesitate to go ahead and put those in your comments field, and we will share them live on this broadcast. And we'll get to those questions toward the end of the program. And so with that, I'd like to hand it off to Curtis.
Okay, and thank you, Lonnie. And so good to, well, I can't see everybody the way I used to, but so good to be here with you tonight on Conversations with Curtis. As Lonnie did mention, even though we changed our platforms, I am still Curtis, Kurt Jazz, Curtis Davenport, and so glad to have you here with us. But let's make sure that we show some appreciation to the people who've made it possible for us to be here with you tonight. And that are our sponsors, of course, the Arts and Science Council, North Carolina Arts Council, Crown Station, and of course, O's Place Jazz newsletter that help us to keep jazz alive, keep it streaming, keep things going. Also, to our supporters, our sustainers, our benefactors, our maestros, our arrangers, our composers, our soloists, aficionados, and of course, we have our JazzArts corporate supporters. Thank you to all of you once again for keeping jazz alive here. And I am very excited to talk to our special guest tonight, a gentleman who has been a major part of so many things in the jazz scene for the last 25 years. And he has a very fine new album out that we're going to talk about. Also, you may have seen him before in some of his appearances on stage and screen. But without further ado, let's get to our special guest. And I'm going to hit this name the way he said it. Dr. Teodross Avery.
Yeah, man. Wow. Yeah, that sounds good. I wish I had my horn. I run out on the stage.
Yeah, you got
felt like I was at Apollo, man. That was a great intro, man.
All right, man. Well, if we ever get you up here in Charlotte playing, maybe you'll get to do that, man. Because I usually like to bring the artists on stage like that, and perhaps we'll have that. We'll just make a little connection for our audience, and perhaps when you're here, we'd have your good friend, brother Charles Craig, here with us on the piano. So
yes,
those of you familiar with what we do in the jazz room know the work of Charles Craig very well. Good friend of Dr. Avery from way back in the day, and even played on his first couple of albums. So but before we even get to that, so since we got Charles Craig mentioned, Dr. Avery, anything about Charles Craig that we should know that we didn't know?
Well, he's a very, very versatile musician, and can play any style, and very soulful as well. So after he played with me, he went on to play with Roy Hargrove and Christian McBride. So he was sought after, pretty quickly after we played together. So he's just an outstanding musician.
That he is, man. That he is. So, but that's at least we want to get that mention in. But let's talk a little bit about you and your career and the things you've been doing. As I mentioned to our audience, I guess though it doesn't look possible because you still look very young, man. You still look like you could be in maybe your late 20s, but you've been on the jazz music scene, at least publicly, for the better part of a little bit more than the last 25 years. And had a lot of things going from your first album that was back on the GRP label back in 1994, in other words, which featured Brother Craig and Roy Hargrove and many others. Now, I understand with that one that you recorded that album just short of your 21st birthday. Is that correct?
Actually, I recorded that album when I was 19.
Wow. Okay, so I'm even off by. But
yeah.
So I know you were at Berkeley at the time. How did that? Let's even talk about how this happened. How you got from being a Berkeley student to suddenly now you're in the studio and recording your first album before 20 on what was at that time GRP, a major label. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, prior to that, I had been playing with a few different artists. I did a program that Betty Carter started called Jazz Ahead, and she at that time she was picking musicians from around the country and bringing them to Brooklyn, New York, and we were in the first one. And some outstanding musicians ended up being in that group. I can't remember everybody, but there was David Sanchez, there was
Yeah.
Marcus Printup, Greg Hutchinson, Brian Blade, Ruben Rogers, Aaron Goldberg, a lot of musicians who are out here making albums and leading their own bands. We were all in that. And then from there, um, Carl Allen, the drummer, heard me play with alongside Marcus Printup, who plays with Lincoln Center. For people who don't know, Jazz at Lincoln Center with Marcel.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting called to do that album with Carl Allen. And then from that record day, there were a couple people who heard me. And when A&R person at GRP was looking for saxophone players, he reached out to a bunch of people, one of which who was the copyist for the sheet music, but he's also a trumpet player, guy who's I'm sure you've heard of. His name is David Weiss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so he was at that time he was doing a lot of charting and stuff like that. So he sent my name to a lady named Anna Sala, and she's a manager. She manages Robbie Coltrane and people like that. And then my name in demo got to Carl Allen through them. So it was just a matter of being, on the scene doing stuff. It was the very beginning of the scene for me. But I was going to hear these musicians when they came through Boston, and also before that when they came through the Bay Area, where I'm from in Northern California. So I was always out listening to music and trying to see who was coming to town. And when I got to Boston, same deal. And I would go hear music and try to talk to the musicians during the break, try to find out little things that I should be working on. Mark Whitfield, the guitarist, he teases me because he said he remembers when I during that time, and we ended up playing together different times later. But he says, "Yeah, man, you used to walk up to me and ask me what I needed to do to get a record deal." He told me flat out, But I was the kind of young person who was always trying to get in where I fit in. You know what I mean? Like, it was all about And as a kid, I had to get up and do chores every day. On my dad's farm, you know what I mean? So that was my responsibility. So when I got out playing music, I was like, okay, what are we gonna do now? How are we gonna get something going? So I just kind of transferred that work ethic and that focus over to music. And so, but Mark told me, he said, I kind of ran up on him, because he was doing a lot of the time. He was doing jazz futures, and different things like that. He had a record deal on Warner Brothers. And so I just asked him, what I need to do, to get, and he told me, and other people told me too, and then and of course with other people, I didn't say anything like that. I didn't ask any questions. I just sat back and listened to what they were doing musically, because some musicians don't really talk much. They just play. So, at that time, you realize that it wasn't the time to ask about getting a demo together or a promo pack. It was time to just listen to how they put the notes and the music together.
Okay. And it turned out nicely, had a very fine debut album there. And then the follow-up a couple of years later, My Generation. And on that one, we started to hear a little bit of not only what you did in the straight ahead, but we started to hear a little bit more outside of that and a little bit more of, I guess, what we call contemporary. We started to hear a little bit of the hip hop leanings and other things that started to infuse your music. And I definitely do want to get back and talk about your hip hop influences and other things. But before we go any further, I just want to talk about your new album, your brand new one out right now. And we're so excited about, as I'm sure you are, Harlem Stories, the music of Thelonious Monk on my man Willie Jones III, WJ3 label. I have said that I can say that I heard it. I have my copy now, and it is outstanding and just for me, it was thrilling and exciting to hear what you've done and how you've approached, of course, the music of the great Thelonious Monk. Let me ask you about that album. What made you decide now on a Monk album?
Well, I took sort of a break from being a leader, and I was playing with a lot of musical acts in the popular music genres. And when I left New York in 2010, I really returned back to my roots in terms of like improvising, really playing my horn, practicing regularly, not really being connected to the business as I was in New York City, because I was a working musician. And any working musician, their dream is to be working all the time and to
Yeah.
get calls from any and everybody any day of the week. And so that's what I had worked up to. But at the same time, I wasn't playing jazz all the time. I wasn't playing my instrument as much, because the more I play popular music and the more I play with other people, I play less notes, coincidentally. And so I wasn't playing the horn as much as I was on the gigs. There's something now, because I'm a composer, a writer, and producer, I can appreciate that, because there's production that happens when you're not playing your saxophone. That if you listen, you're learning from all these other, details in the music. How someone produced a song, how the arrangement is, what rhythms are they playing, how the rhythm section is locking up. There's all these other things that you can pay attention to that are still interesting. But in the realm of like picking up that tenor and getting down, I wasn't doing that as much on the gigs. I was doing that at the jam sessions.
Yeah.
But so when I left New York, it was like a time for me to reconnect with my instrument, reconnect with the composers who are really like highly influential on me and responsible for me getting me to where I am, and really getting me to where I was when I was recording albums. Like, those two statements were like the result of playing lots of music by Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Kenny Dorham, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Michael Brecker, all these different people who I was listening to. And that those two albums are those two albums represent those influences.
Yeah.
Then I left, now I came back, and I kind of went right back to where I started. And so the first album I put out was a Coltrane project, because that was my first biggest influence. And then after that, I went to Monk, because I was listening to Monk when I was in high school, and I was, in an apartment or my dad's house, just shedding all day in the summers. Where he lived was out in the country, and there was nothing to do. And it's hella hot.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about 100 degrees in the country. You don't want to be outside. You rather be in the crib, right? Man. So, and then you pull out the horn and just shed all day. So I was getting, 4-6 hours, sometimes 8 hours a day, just playing the horn and listening to these different people like Monk, like Coltrane. So that music was always in me. But the thing about, and this is something I discovered with time and experience. The thing is, like, if I don't make an album playing Monk's music and you don't know me and you haven't seen me playing jam sessions and you haven't heard me, at a club, you would never know that I even know Monk's music. Right? And it's like, this is a different time, say in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, people play with different bands. And so those bands would constantly be making the rounds. Whether it was the regular club circuit or the chitlin circuit or whatever, they would come through town. People would not have a lot of entertainment options. And so they would go hear those bands because they couldn't throw on, Apple TV or Roku or something like that, right? So they was like, who's coming to town? Oh, so-and-so's coming to town. Let's go check out, blah, blah, blah. And then you're hearing these players and they're performing. They're, younger players performing with older players. And they're under their tutelage, they're playing in Monk's band, or they're playing in Lionel Hampton's band, as Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and different people, Clifford Brown, they all did, Quincy Jones. So they're playing in these bands and people are getting to hear these people. But see, now times are different. So people have a lot of entertainment options. They may or may not go to hear a band when it comes through town. And my thing was I realized that a lot of people, if they didn't live in New York or one of the big city centers, they're not really hearing musicians present all aspects of what they can do. And so I could make 4 albums of originals, say like my first 2 albums, my first 3, 4, 5 albums are mostly originals. So, because I'm a writer, I'm a composer, an arranger, and so that's the side of me I like to get out. But if you only got my albums and you didn't know me, you would not know that I knew how to play Monk's music. But I've been playing Monk's music since I was 15 years old. And, he's one of the, major composers of jazz and part of bebop, one of the geniuses that helped change jazz into modern music. And a lot of the music that we hear today extended out of what was happening at Minton's in Harlem.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. So once we got out of the swing era and we start dealing with bebop, Monk is in that conversation, Bird is in that conversation, Dizzy, Miles, Coleman Hawkins, because he started that type of playing in terms of playing the changes, playing through the changes, outlining the chords, Roy Haynes, Kenny Clark, they are like really the people who are pushing in terms of the music and also socially and politically. They were trying to push, for equality through the music. So Monk is a part of that, and what we're hearing today, we're not playing, for people who know music, we're not playing triads, these extended chords, all these different colors and stuff. That's coming out of bebop, first. And then from there, it evolved into other areas of the music, but it first came out of bebop. So I thought it was important for me to let people know that I could play that music, and I really like his music, and I think that his music makes a real clear statement in so many ways, and it's just crystal clear, man. He has such a strong personality in his compositions and the way that he affects you,
Yeah. So let's let me continue to talk about the album. 10 tracks on there. Now, as we well know, you and I, and I'm sure most of our audience, Monk was a prolific composer. So if you're doing a Monk album, brother, you had a world of songs to choose from. Why the 10 that you chose? What about these resonated with you that you said, yeah, on my Monk album, these are the ones that are going to be there?
Well, it was a combination of picking songs that were right down the middle in terms of like swinging and the groove, because Monk would groove you to death on the bottom between the bass and the drums, and then he put his abstractions on top with the melodies and his changes. So I wanted to make sure it was like a real balance between those common Monk sounds and then also the uncommon sounds that people wouldn't expect, because that is also another side of his character in music. So, something like In Walk Bud, that I consider it to be like right down the middle. It's like boom. Monk's Dream, such a happy melody. Da da dee doo boom, da da dee doo boom, just like right down the middle. But then there's other songs in there where you say, okay, Pananica, that's a little different in how it breathes.
Ugly Beauty. Yeah.
Ugly Beauty.
Yeah. It's
not something that people go walking up to you and say, hey man, I know Ugly Beauty by Thelonious Monk.
It's one of my favorites, but that's
one of my favorites.
Yeah.
They might say, I know a ugly beauty, but they don't know ugly beauty. So I try to keep a balance going, you know. But at the same time, you know, because when you're making an album when you're choosing music, you want to say, okay, well, I can't speak for other people, but for me,
Yeah.
it's like I want to make sure that people who don't know music can get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to make sure that people who really know the music can get something out of it. So, you know, a song like Monk's Dream, I think a common person could hear that.
Yeah.
They don't have to be a music aficionado to really get that. But at the same time, people like me and you who really know Monk's music, we say, oh, he did Ugly Beauty. Oh, okay. Let's check this out.
Yeah.
So trying to keep that balance going.
Okay. Let's talk about even now the musicians you chose on the album. It was definitive. I mean, you divide the album into what's specifically called Band 1 and Band 2, and featuring, you know, two very fine groups, but distinctly different. Now, you have just looking here on Band 1, you have Anthony Wanze on the piano, Willie Jones III along on the drums. Corcoran Holt is the constant. You know, he's on both sides. But then on Band 2, now we get Dee Dee Jackson, you know, who at least I knew his work, you know, from being, you know, a little on the avant-garde side of the music, and, you know, and Marvelyn Boogaloo Smith, you know, who's I know you've had some past associations with him, but again, except for Brother Holt, there were two distinctly different groups here. And what went into
Oh,
a decision?
and also let me mention
Yeah.
Alacoy.
Yes. Yes, Alacoy Pete. Yes, definitely on
playing
Ruby My
percussion
Dear.
on
Yeah.
Ruby My Dear. Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm sorry. And I apologize for it wasn't intentional.
No, it's cool because I kind of sold it as Band 1, Band 2. That ain't your fault.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Also on Band 1, and did add quite a bit to Ruby My Dear and give it a different feel. So, but idea is, you know, what went into. Obviously, it was a conscious decision to have these two groups. And what went into that decision? What were you looking to do when you did that?
Well, I was trying to kind of make a couple points. One was, you know, definitely going for the bebop feel of Harlem. And that first group to me represents that.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Jones driving that rhythm swiftly, you know, like he is, and swinging so hard. And then Corcoran being right there on the bass, and Wanze being more of the bebop side of Monk. I wanted to really get that across.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, Monk can be abstract. You know, abstract to the point where there are other piano players in avant-garde who you can hear Monk's influence on them. And a person who keeps coming up in my mind is Andrew Hill.
Yeah.
People think of Andrew Hill as being influenced by Monk. I don't know why people don't hear that, but to me, I hear Monk in his music quite a bit.
I can hear now that you mention it. Yeah, I'm starting to hear it.
Yeah, but I never hear people
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, you know, Andrew Hill is an extension of Monk. I never hear people say that, but I clearly can hear it. And so I wanted to represent that avant-garde side or that extension of Monk. And Dee Dee was like the perfect choice for that. He has that balance between, you know, stride, you know, the stride that was happening in Harlem, you know, with the different stride pianos that Monk heard, and then also the abstract avant-garde side. And Marvin Boogaloo Smith, he played with Archie Shepp, Sun Ra, you know, so he can go avant-garde as well. But then, you know, he's one of those players that can go either way with it too. But I wanted him to have that approach in the music along with Dee Dee. And Dee Dee and Marvin had played together before that record date with Billy Bang. So they already had a certain approach in the music that was very familiar to each other, and I wanted to do it like that. I mean, I like to swing, and I also like to loosen up the rhythm and go avant-garde too, you know. And so that's what I was thinking about.
Okay, cool. For those of you not familiar with Billy Bang, he's a fine violinist, jazz violinist as well. Just throwing that in there as well. Okay, so we've got how that came about, and we've talked a little bit about the album. And Lonnie, I'm getting you ready. You said, you know, so for what we're about to do, we want to sample a little bit of the album in just a minute. We'll play a little bit of a live. It looked like it was live in studio with Dr. Avery and the band on Teo, another fine Monk composition. I can see why it might have some appeal to you, just from a naming perspective.
Well,
But
you know,
also,
in New York, man, you know, people always musicians, they always come up to me and they go, Teo. And, you know, Teo being Teo Macero,
yeah.
Miles and Monk's producer at Columbia Records, you know, so they would always go, Teo. And I would say, okay. It was kind of crazy, man, because I went from being called Teddy as a boy to Teodross, my full name, and then Teo stuck while I was in New York. I said, well, damn, I gotta own this now, you know what I'm saying? Let me go ahead and do this song, man. So it's kind of like a little pun that I threw in the music.
No, it's perfectly fine because it's a good song to begin with. So good choice, and it's the album opener. After we come out of this clip, we're going to play a little clip from that, and then afterwards, we're going to make sure that everyone knows how to pick up if you want to have a physical copy of the album. As I always say when I hold these up, I say, no, my brother, you're going to have to get your own. You know, so this is mine, but physical copies, I know, of the album will be available on September the 18th. Digitally, it is available as we speak through all the fine digital platforms. But Lonnie, if you're ready, we'd like to go with Dr. Teodross Avery and his band from Harlem Stories, the music of Thelonious Monk with Teo.
Take it out. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Man, we're gonna make y'all have to buy the album to hear the rest. Okay, so we just wanted to give y'all a taste. We didn't want anybody, sitting out there, with recorders and starting to put things down digitally or anything. Because we're in a pandemic, y'all. Artists need y'all to be buying the stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
Bootlegging.
that's right. I forgot, who it was, but I heard somebody start an album once and say, "All right, bootleggers, roll your tapes." I wish I could remember who it was. It was a number of years ago. I think it was a Rock Cat or something like that. But it was very, very funny when he said it, though. But in any case, once again, that is from the brand new album. As far as CD copies still to be released, still to come out from Dr. Teodross Avery.
Yeah,
Harlem
man.
Stories. Yes, the music of Thelonious Monk. Now, I don't know if Rebecca, if you have it ready, we'd like to make sure that everyone, if we can right now, can see that link if they want to. Yes, CD release date. There it is. I'm getting used to this new platform too, y'all. So CD release date September 18th. CD pre-order on Amazon.com. You can go there as soon as we're finished tonight. Make sure you get your copy, as I know what Amazon does. You go there, you pre-order it tonight. They will ship it out to you on the 18th. It'll be on its way to you to make sure that you do have a copy. But a lot of excellent music there. Let's talk a little bit about, as I listen to you there, of course, and been listening to you for a while, I've heard a lot of the influences, obviously the influence of Coltrane and a little bit of Stanley Turrentine, but I just want to talk about, but you have, and let me say this, in the ensuing years, you definitely become your own artist, but there's still those who influence you. Let's talk about some of your influences besides the couple that I just mentioned. Anybody else been a big influence on you over the years?
Oh yeah, sure, man. And it goes beyond saxophone. You know, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, McCoy Tyner, Freddie Hubbard, Herbie Hancock, Antonio Carlos Jobim, Hank Mobley, Miles Davis, Max Roach, Dizzy, Clifford Brown, Lee Morgan.
Yeah.
Heavy hitters, man.
Oh, yeah.
Heavy hitters. That's what it is the heavy hitters, man. Those are the people who really hit. Michael Brecker.
Yeah.
People who pick up the instrument and really go in on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're not playing featherweight music.
No.
Definitely
not.
The time that I got into jazz, I needed to hear some hardcore sounds. See, I was
not
coming.
A lightweight cat in that bunch, man.
No. And the thing was, I was coming from hip hop and rock and funk.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also on top of that, jumping bikes, getting into fights, climbing trees and getting hurt. So my whole like frequency was just on it. It's another area, you know what I'm saying? Just so I needed that music to really hit hard to keep my attention.
Yeah.
So that's why those people really stick out. They stuck out for me, and they also had a clear concept in the music.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was clear, like they were playing a certain way, composing a certain way. Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Because his compositional approach.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, him and Horace Silver, man, that's like heavyweight composing, small group composing, those are the people, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk. You mentioned something when you were talking there, and something that we talked about even earlier, a lot of your influences, as a lot of cats who came up when you did, weren't just influenced by the Great American Songbook as the earlier cats were, but you were influenced by, R&B and hip hop and rock and other things. And in your recordings over the years, we've still heard quite a bit of that influence, not in this album or in the Coltrane album that came before it, but in a lot of what you did, say, in between the beginning of your career and up to the last couple of years, we've heard a lot of that influence. And I know some cats recently I've heard criticized for having influences outside of that. What do you say to those who would criticize you for letting some of the things that you grew up with influence your music?
I mean, I answer the question, but I don't think about people like that.
Okay.
I answer the question because I respect you, but like people who come at artists for feeling a certain way, to me, they really should they shouldn't really speak on that, because every artist is supposed to speak their truth in the art that they practice. That every art, not just music.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to know a certain idiom in the art that you do.
Yeah.
But you know, if you have influences that you feel good about, what's the problem? You know what I mean? If you feel good about it, then that's what it is. You know? I mean, really, if you feel bad about something, that comes into the music.
Yeah.
Or the art that you do. There are people who feel badly about different things, and you know, in the society or in their own lives, you know, and they're trying to like cope through their art. So it's kind of like for someone to say you can't think or feel that way, I think that's really overstepping one's boundaries. It's like saying when you were young and single, you can't date that person. Someone said. Someone walk up to Curtis, you can't date that person. Or Curtis, you can't eat that food, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you eating that. See you eating that food. Like Curtis, you're gonna be like, huh? Like, what, bro? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Always
you're not talking to me about who I should be dating or what food right? It's like once we take it out of like music, it's what are you talking about? It's unacceptable. But in music, some people feel like they have the right to like jump into that square. And the thing is, you don't have to like it. No one is saying everyone has to like that what everyone is putting out. No, we're not saying that. No one's saying that. You don't have to like it, but you can't condemn somebody for feeling the way they do about life and expressing it through their music. You can't condemn them. You say, hey, man, I don't like that album. I don't like that project they put out. You know, I prefer not to listen to it. But I do like the project that they put out called so-and-so. You know what I mean? Or, oh, so-and-so's dead music's not my style, but I like so-and-so. You know, and you have that right?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, it's like some people might say to me, or say about me, they're not gonna say it to me because they know what kind of person I am. But they might say, hey man, I don't like the fact that you played with, you know, pop, hip hop, and soul artists. Okay, that's cool. You're not paying my rent though. You know what I'm saying?
You know, preachers say, well.
Why? You're not paying my rent. You know, and let's not even let's back it up. I don't even speak monetary reasons. You don't know what I grew up. I grew up listening. Look, in my house where I grew up, in my dad's house, I heard Ohio Players, Rick James, Teddy Pendergrass, Luther Vandross, Sade, Eddie Harris, Rahsaan Roland Kirk, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and that's just the music I heard from my parents. Then when I got off into my own thing, it even went further out. You know what I mean? So how someone will tell you can't respond to that stimuli? Let's break it down in psychology. Let's not even think music. Stimuli. You grew up around these sounds. You heard it. You saw the album covers. Stimuli. It affects you, makes you act a certain way, hear music a certain way. And so someone comes along and say, hey, I don't like that stimuli
Hmm.
that affected you. You can't respond to that. If we weren't dealing with music, no one would ever say that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If
Yeah.
someone met Curtis and said, Curtis, I really like the way you're well mannered, you're very educated, you know, you're a very kind person, you're respectable. That's what you were raised around, right? If
True.
they didn't like that in you, you would be like, what are you talking about? This is what I was raised around. This is who I am. I live this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no one would ever, like, you would never entertain that. So I don't know why when it comes to music, people all of a sudden, we're not dealing with stimuli anymore.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden everyone has a choice in terms of what influences them. You're talking about a baby crawling around listening to music and that's what they hear, or when they, they get a little older and, man, let me tell you, let's keep it real. You got young people listening to music and practicing instruments and staying out of trouble. That's a blessing in and of itself.
Yes,
Folks
sir.
should be happy to see, hey, that this person's positive out here, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like vibing on a positive vibration. Like that's a blessing, man. That's like,
yeah, man.
That's a good place to be, man.
Mm-hmm.
You got people out here knocking each other upside the head, fighting, it's like Ratchet City out here, man. You know what I mean? You got people making music and being cool and being calm. Like that's, man, what more do you want? Like, you don't have to love it, but you can't condemn it.
Speak the truth, brother. Speak it. Yes, sir. Can I get an amen?
Wow.
Let's talk a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to the audience in a few minutes, but something I'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk about, where some people may have been somewhat familiar with you, or say, oh, that's that dude. Getting back to a few appearances that you've made in the public media of movies and televisions, most notable one, even though when it first came out and I was sitting with my wife and saying, that's that young cat who just came out with the album, and said, Teodross, yeah. And I said, who? But anyway, going back to the movie Love Jones, 1997. And you made a famous appearance alongside Lorenz Tate, as he is trying to, as the saxophonist in this extremely hip club, where he's trying to seduce Nia Long with Blues for Nina. And I know you've also made some appearances on Blackish, Beauty Shop, other things you've been involved with over the years. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the film industry and the television industry, how that came to be a part of your life.
Well, so I'll start with Love Jones, because that was pretty much the first film that I was a part of. So I got to give a shout out to Joshua Redman.
Yeah.
Joshua Redman at the time was burning it up. He's still burning it up, but he was burning it up like the first time back then. And he recommended that I get the part for Love Jones. So because they had asked him to do it, he couldn't do it. But then he pointed in my direction, and then they asked me to do it. So that's how that came about specifically. And then I got a call from the director, Theodore Witcher, and he was he had heard my music and he really liked it. And then he invited us to come out. And then that's when I met Daryl Jones, bassist Rolling Stones, because he did the films for that. So he had us come out, and then I brought my own band with me, and then I reached back to one of my people in the past, Carl Allen, and Marcus Shelby from the group Black Note, and also Jeff Parker, who was a guitar player from Chicago, who's doing his thing now, and then I played with Lorenz Tate and Daryl Jones as well. So, that was how that first thing came about. And the camera is something that I always kind of Doug, you know, I always thought like, wow, it's kind of cool that you could be on TV or in a movie, and when you make a musical statement, it lives forever.
Yeah.
And also, that's one thing I always noticed about playing in clubs. Like playing in clubs is great, and the energy that happens with that is just it's unbelievable, right? I mean, that live atmosphere with an audience, it's just special. Um, but if it's not recorded and documented, it only reached that group of people, and it won't continue on. Man, uh, Love Jones, man, that's the gift that keeps on giving, man. It's
Yeah,
like
man.
every year is hitting on Valentine's Day in Black History Month in February.
Hmm.
So it's like it's the gift that keeps on giving, and it still reaches out to people who wouldn't really know jazz. I'm sure the people who are in Mo Better Blues, I'm sure they feel the same way, that they still get people walking up to them saying, "Hey, I saw you in Mo Better Blues." You know, people who don't listen to jazz,
Hmm.
you know, regular people who like maybe they just like film, you know, but yet they're hearing jazz and they're hearing the music and they're going, "Oh man, you know, okay, cool, man. Yeah, who is this? Oh, I like this song. Okay." And then they might come hear you play or buy your music. You know, I'm happy about that. I'm very happy
Yeah.
about that the music, my song in particular, my generation, reached
Hmm.
out to people through that movie and made me some good bread too. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
So yeah, I ain't hating on that, you know. But and then it's kind of like once you are like a real working musician and you're out here and doing your thing, you start to meet agents and you meet other musicians who are in the same wavelength, and then they reach out to you. You know, like I got a call to do Blackish here out in LA, and that was from a musician who does TV often, and so and then you kind of get on that circuit, so to speak. Just like you have a group of musicians who end up being studio musicians,
Yeah.
and they get those calls, you know. So I happen to get TV and film calls, and then the other things you mentioned, like Beauty Shop and Brown Sugar, that my music was brought into those films.
Yeah.
Me as a producer, writer, because I also produce hip hop, R&B as well, and so my tracks were being brought in um, to those films.
Well, as you said, it's a good way to get people to know you who wouldn't ordinarily know you. At least it gives you that recognition, and nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah,
So,
and,
so let's see, Lonnie, if we have, since we have a few minutes left, I just want to see if we have any questions that the audience would have for Dr. Avery. Because if not, I'll
So
keep talking.
far, we have had a very shy audience.
Okay.
So I would say I will certainly let you know as the new questions come in, but so far we've not had any questions.
Okay. Well, then that's fine. I will continue because like I've got plenty more to say. I want to share just something I've been keeping on my screen on my phone here. You may have heard, Dr. Avery, of a recent article, and I'm coming to you with this as an educator that you are. And the recent article in the New York Times that talked about jazz and jazz education programs, especially on the university level, and how, with jazz being what is essentially a Black or African American, whatever your preferred term is, but it is a Black American music at its root. However, I'm just going to quote directly from this New York Times article from last week. It says that partly as a result, he says, well, I'll just even start it before that. The very institutional acceptance that many musicians sought in the mid to late 20th century has hitched jazz to a broken and still segregated education system. Partly as a result, the music has become inaccessible to and disconnected from many of the very people who created it: young Black Americans, poorer people, and others at the societal margin. This is one more thing, and then I'll ask you to comment. of the more than 500 students who graduate from American universities with jazz degrees each year, less than 10% are Black. In 2017, the last year with data available, precisely 1% of jazz degree grads were Black women. I want to ask you, especially as an educator, what your thoughts are on that quote and what, if anything, is wrong with the educational system. And I'm saying, if anything, because I just want to hear your opinion.
Well, statistics don't lie, right? I can't sit here and tell you that what you just read isn't true. I think that it's very important to always remember the root, because although we want the music to advance, we don't want to alienate the culture of the people or the people from the culture that it was created, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on one second.
Sure. And Dr. Avery will be back with us in a minute. Meanwhile, again, no, it's a new format, but if you do have any questions, please make sure that you get them to Lonnie through the chat. Go ahead, sir.
So it's important, could we, in a fair world, study any culture and forget about the people who started it, right? Could we study martial arts and not think about Asians, Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Korean culture? It would be foolish for us to do that, because there's gifts in the culture that help the music or help the art stay authentic. At the same time, you want to share it with the world. So we have to just remember to keep a balance. Or the people who are maybe not listening, they have to think we have to keep a balance. You should want to keep a balance in every culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, I think it gives, when you keep balance, you keep that authenticity in the art. It's kind of like, okay, you know how Double Dutch, the Double Dutch has grown.
New York, man. Yeah, I know.
New York. Okay, so Double Dutch really hit overseas, especially in Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're like outstanding at it. But you know what they do? They always go back to Harlem to celebrate it and to compete in it. And that's how they give back to the culture. They say, we love it, but we still want to bring it back to its original roots to celebrate it with you. I think that's how you keep the respect and the integrity, the artistic integrity and the cultural relevancy in the art, whatever art it is. I teach in the inner city at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. So most of my students are of some color, whether it's African American, Spanish, Asian. So I'm not in a situation like these schools you mentioned where they're, they might see, like you said, 10% or 5%.
It was, yes, it's 10%, less than 10%.
Less than 10%. Yeah. So I'm at a college that I'm teaching, and it's flipped. It's like 90%. But what I do, which is I think is important, is that I make sure that they know the roots of the music. We start with field hollers. We go to Negro spirituals, early blues, rural blues. I'm talking about out in the Mississippi Delta. Deal with that music and relate it to harmony and theory. So, we're dealing with deep blues, and then we move on to, the Great American Songbook, Tin Pan Alley, and we show the music's growth from its infancy. I don't leave out any areas of the music that are important to its development, because it would be wrong for me to do so, and it would be a lie if I did that. I can't skip, I can't skip over the blues. I can't skip over field hollers. I can't skip over Tin Pan Alley. I can't skip over the Great American Songbook, because all of that is part of the music.
Mhm.
You know, we're dealing with Scott Joplin, Muddy Waters, you know, Bessie Smith, you know, the Roots, and then we're dealing with Gershwin because you know Gershwin's music became part of jazz, and he
True.
used to hang out in Harlem and listen to jazz. So you know, I tell the truth where I'm coming from, and I think that whenever you don't tell the truth, you know, there's always going to be some folks who are going to say, "Hey, check this out." They're going to let you know, we see what you're doing.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's not right,
Yeah.
you know. And I always, like when I went to USC, I went to go study lots of classical music because that's where I was. And I know how classical music and jazz and modern jazz, how they are related. And I studied that and I respect it. Right. But I didn't go in there trying to paint it black. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I give respect to the European composers for who they were. It wasn't about like, well, I'm gonna make y'all black to make me feel better. I think that's wrong. I don't think anybody should do that because it's not honest. And eventually, you know, what's done in the darkness will come to light. And that's what's going on now. People are calling people out and saying, hey, this is this and that's not fair and that's not right. And you have to keep it right because at the end of the day, people can fact check you. And they can
Very
find out,
true.
and especially with the internet the way it is now, you know, I can find out what you ate last night, Curtis.
Oh Lord.
I can find out what you ate last night and what part you threw away.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, just keep it real. You know what I mean? It's important to show respect for these different cultures because we all put something in this. All of
Very
them.
true.
You know, we all added something to the culture of humanity, the cultures of humanity. And when we start talking about music, we all added something to music. Certain cultures just happen to do certain things differently, and it hit. We shouldn't put that sweep that under the rug. We should be like, okay, cool. You know, oh, you did that. Right on. Okay, all right, I got something. Check this out. And then it's
Mhm.
that exchange that happens that makes America more unique than any place on the earth because we have diversity here that
Yeah.
other places don't have. You know, we have every type of person, every type of religion, every type of music style practiced in different communities. So, you know, we're unique, but at the same time, we don't want to overstep the roots of any different art.
Yeah.
We want to, you know, check it out, you know. And the thing is, like, if you or I were studying ethnomusicology, we would have to do field work.
Hmm.
And I really feel like jazz needs some of this. That you have to study the culture as well as the music.
Yeah.
That's very important because if you understand, for instance, in jazz schools, right? If you understand
Mhm.
that there were different movements that happened with the music. There was the first Great Migration in the Harlem Renaissance in the 20s,
Mhm.
and that the music is relative to that. That we have Louis Armstrong, Duke
Mhm.
Ellington, you know, all these artists in Chicago, in Harlem, in New Orleans that are struggling to get away from Jim Crow
Mhm.
down south. And the music is a representation of that. That the music that they're playing is extending to freedom. Not only are they going up north out of the deep south, but the music is starting to speak out, wanting respect, wanting to be free. If all students were taught that, then it wouldn't be such a foreign thing
Mhm.
to say, hey, you should study African Americans in jazz. But because the history, the historical aspects are separated, that's like a foreign language, right?
Well said. Yeah.
And so, you know, some programs they teach about the cultures, like I said, ethnomusicology, they really deal with that.
Yeah.
they're going through, they're approaching it from an anthropological perspective. So it's like, who are the people? Where do they live? Where do they migrate from? What year was this? What percentage of the people are religious, non-religious? You know, are they working class? All these different things that totally give jazz the character that it has. The fact that, you know, it came out of the Deep South up north for freedom, that music has a sound to it. It's pushing out. It's pushing out of Congo Square in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Pushing out. It's pushing away from slavery or Jim Crow thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's nothing to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's to the point where when these questions start to come up, people need to ask why. Why is it coming up?
Yeah.
Well, it's coming up because there's a huge amount of people that don't know the history of the music. Right? And so it gets to a point where people are going, you know, you don't know that, or you don't know this artist, or you didn't know that this style came, or, you know, you didn't know that the Harlem Renaissance was happening when jazz was becoming, you know, modern or outspoken, or you didn't know about the poets of the Harlem Renaissance, and that's why lyrics started to change. You didn't know Gershwin liked to go to Harlem to the Cotton Club to listen to Duke Ellington's band. Like, you didn't. It's coming to the point where people just don't know. And I think when people don't know, that's a great time to educate, to say, actually, check this out. And when you start to talk about, you know, Black Americans in the struggle for equality in America, you can't leave out the music. The music is probably just as important as the political leaders. Like, the music was really the way that the struggle was communicated while they were actually marching. You know, there are different documentaries that talk about, you know, what's the sister's name who wrote Dancing in the Street? Martha and the Vandal.
Oh, Martha and the Vandellas, Dancing in the Street.
Vandellas, right?
Yeah.
Dancing in the Street.
Yeah.
You know, that song had a double meaning. You know, it was dancing in the street, literally, but dancing also protesting.
Yes.
In the street. You know, so it was a double entendre, but at the same time, if you're educating, you have an opportunity to teach about the history of Black Americans in the music. You know, Alabama by John Coltrane.
Yes.
You know, they're speaking up about situations, and to leave that out is not respectful to the people who created the music. You know, Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. You know, that's important to the music. And so if you're running a program and you want to leave that out, at some point somebody's going to ask you, why are you playing the music? Like, are you playing the music because you love the music, or are you playing the music because you don't want to give a voice to the originators of the music, or maybe even the extensions of the music? Right?
Right.
And some people are on it like that. Like, that's where they're coming from. Like, like, no question. Like, no, actually, I don't want to give you a voice, and I don't want them to have a voice. You know, but you know, we can agree to disagree, right? I mean, this is an opportunity for people to have different opinions. I think what's dangerous, though, is when you have an atmosphere where nobody can say anything. That's not good. That's not good for any genre, any art, because art is supposed to react or tell a story, right? Tell a story about the people or react to conditions in society. That's art. That's art's responsibility, right? Art's responsibility is not to make the status quo move a little nicer and just look a little more pretty. That's entertainment. You know what I mean? And even some entertainers would disagree with me and say, no, I can still be expressive, but not point a finger, you know? You have some entertainers who were like of that cloth, like a Sammy Davis Jr. Just a great entertainer, and he was great for that. But his job wasn't a Paul Robeson's job. Paul Robeson was like,
Oh yeah,
I'll
well,
stop
Robeson,
singing.
that was a whole
This is
different
problem
story.
that I'm going to address.
Mm-hmm.
That's Paul Robeson, you know. So I think it's an opportunity. It should be an opportunity for people to listen and trade ideas. And you know, if one cannot trade ideas, then it starts to be that we're not living in a free society. You cannot express yourselves, and that's communism. That's what people in communism have to live under. Right? You're persecuted for speaking your views. You cannot speak. Don't say anything. That's not American. That's not what this is about. And when I run into people who are like that, I'm like, well, you're just in the wrong country. But you can feel like that, but that's not what this is supposed to be. Right? Yeah. You should be able to talk about, we're not out here, you know, trying to put people in danger. We're dealing with music. Right? So if music is the voice of the people, then we should be able to talk about music and exchange ideas.
Well said. That's it. Well said.
You got somebody.
We got a quick question here. Yeah, we're a little bit over, but let's get this question in. As a beginning saxophone, I was wondering if Teodross could share any tips, resources, and techniques that worked for him when it comes to developing sound and skill advancement.
Yeah. Can I just respond? How should I do that?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll just say it out loud. So, as a beginning saxophonist, you got to get your tone together. So, really spend time on playing long tones, practicing whatever you're practicing slowly, so that you really engage your muscles in your embouchure, your breathing, your diaphragm. Everything works together at a slower pace, and you affect everything better. Sort of like doing push-ups slowly. So, you know, if you do push-ups slowly, you're going to get like really strong. Where if you're doing fast, you'll still get strong, but it'll be a different kind of strength. If you do them slow, you bulk up. If you push up slow, you tone up. So for all the physical education people who are on me right there. So you gotta learn your scales, you know, gotta get your scales, major, minor, the different types of minor and major scales. And then start playing the piano. Get on the piano, start learning chords, and then play the chords on your saxophone. You know, da 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 boo wee da 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 boo ba da da da. You know, playing up the chord, down the chord, doing stuff like that, and then try to grow as a saxophonist with the piano. Learning your chords. There's a book you should get called The Jazz Piano Book by Mark Levine. That's a very good book for pianists as well as people who want to know about chords. You start learning voicing. Outside of that, shoot me an email and get some online lessons from me, and then I'll really hook you up because we'll have time. Or shoot me a DM me on Facebook or Instagram, Teodross Avery.
All right, and there you see on the screen that you can continue and to follow and support Dr. Teodross Avery at www.teodrossavery.com on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram. We will come, well, one more thing before we go, before I turn things back over to Lonnie to close. Once again, Dr. Teodross Avery's new album, Harlem Stories, the music of Thelonious Monk. Physical copies will be available as of next week. That's next Friday, the September the 18th. If you are a digital person, you can go right now and buy it. I believe it would be on iTunes, Amazon, any of the places where you can find that. You can pre-order your CD on Amazon right now. Yes, go ahead, Doc.
Just wanted to say, the gentleman who wrote the biography of Thelonious Monk a few years ago, a man by the name of Robin D.G. Kelly,
Yes.
A really heavyweight author. He also did the liner notes for my album. So if you buy the physical copy, you can read his liner notes. He's a heavyweight writer, and he really knows Thelonious Monk. He was dropping so much knowledge on me about Monk, left and right. So if you're, if you like to know information that most people don't know about composers, you should read those liner notes. Aside from the fact that we swinging hard, and
yeah,
and we going in, Curtis, we going in.
Bro. Yes, sir. Dr. Teodross Avery, has been a pleasure, my brother, to sit down with you this evening and spend a little time. Thank you for taking some time out and being with us. Thank you for your knowledge, your education, and everything that you've done for this music that we call jazz. We appreciate you, my brother.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Lonnie, as well.
And speaking of Lonnie, we will turn things over to Lonnie to close out. But as always, my name is Curtis Davenport. You can catch me now and forever at my station, and that is Kurt Jazz Radio on the Live 365 platform, where we are already playing some tracks since the digital version is out of the new Teodross Avery album, and so much more that you love in jazz. So I will turn it over to you, Lonnie, to take us home. But thank you all for joining us for this great conversation this evening. Lonnie. Lonnie, you're on mute, just to let you know.
All right. Thank you, Curtis. And thank you, Dr. Teodross, for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed. And I do want to say, if you are not familiar with JazzArts Charlotte, please do visit our website at thejazzarts.org. We are a Charlotte-based nonprofit organization, and we're connecting the community and developing a jazz audience through education, performance, and musician support. If you have the ability, please do consider a gift to the jazzarts.org so that we can continue programs such as this and our other live streaming platforms. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.